Good afternoon, and welcome to the Western Energy Markets Governing Body General Session. Please note that today's call is being recorded, and currently all attendees are in a listen-only mode. There will be opportunity for public comment throughout today's call, and we will make sure to give you all instructions on how you can enter the public comment queue at that time. With that, I'll now go ahead and turn the call over to Chair Rebecca Wagner. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Silas. Good afternoon, everyone, in joining us online. And I imagine there's folks not regular people at the ISO in the big room today, but for all of you joining us here today, welcome. It's our last meeting of the year, and of course, we had to jam pack it full. Lots of things to cover today, and heading into the new year. Just wanted to just reflect on a few minutes or a few seconds on the past year that we've had. Just looking back, I was just trying to capture some of the high points, and I won't steal all of Elliot's thunder in his CEO report. But once again, we had a strong performance of the energy imbalance market, that this really creates the basis and it reminds us why we're doing this and why building into EDAM. It kind of gives me hope and momentum of the success we can build, and how far we've come since the inception of EIM. And now it seems like we're going lightning speed into EDAM. I want to note that there was a number of entities that committed to EDAM this year, really building that strong momentum for a successful launch of EDAM, broadening the footprint, which ultimately brings more benefits for customers and an improved reliability, which is something that I think we all care about. In terms of governance, another transitional year. We triggered step one earlier this summer, and which moved us back to primary authority, with the caveat of having the jump ball filing or option, which distinguished it from primary authority in days of old EIM. And I also wanted to note the engagement with the BOSSer. As a former regulator, I love the interaction with the BOSSer, the training, their interest, and I think it's valuable to keep regulators interested and engaged and well prepared as we move into our EDAM go live in like less than 6 months. So that's all my reflections for the year. I do want to thank all of the stakeholders. There has been a lot. It feels like there was a lot last year, and it doesn't feel like we're slowing down, but I appreciate all the time and effort you all have spent engaging in the processes, and there are so many initiatives and really producing good work. And I'd also like to echo that for the ISO staff and management. That I know it's been a grind for a lot of you. We appreciate your good work. You've set a pretty high bar, so that's your challenge to yourself. But keep up the good work. We appreciate you, and look forward to what the next year brings. So with that, I will turn it back over to Roger Collington for the roll call.
Thank you, Chair Wagner. And let's go ahead. We'll start with you, Chair Wagner.
Here.
Yes, I see you. I know it seems silly sometimes. Vice Chair Campbell.
Here.
Member Decker.
Here.
Member Konzioka.
Here.
And Member Smith.
Here.
We have quorum and full complement of our governing body. Back to you, Chair Wagner.
So we'll go ahead and get the formal part of our show started. Our first agenda item is general public comment. I'll turn it over to Roger to gather any public comments for our agenda today.
Yeah, let me go ahead and do that. First, there were no general public comment letters that have come in, so we have nothing there. And at this point, Silas, if we can check our um, our attendees to see if there are any public comments on items that are not on the agenda. So this is for if people want to speak on something other than what is listed on the agenda, which we will get to later.
If you would like to speak under general public comment, you can please press the raise hand icon at the bottom center of your Zoom screen. Or if you are dialed into the phone only line, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the public comment queue. So far, we do have one hand up. Carrie Bentley, you've been sent a prompt to unmute yourself. You can please go ahead.
Hi, this is Carrie Bentley. Can you guys hear me okay?
We can.
Yes. Great. Hi, everyone. I actually have a public comment about something that will be on the agenda tomorrow. So it's a little bit unusual, but it's for your ears. So good afternoon, Chair, members of the governing body. I'm Carrie Bentley, and I represent the Western Power Trading Forum. WPTF is a broad-based member organization dedicated to transparency and competition. We support a successful and timely launch of EDAM. As you'll hear more about tomorrow, EDAM implementation has progressed forward and the inter-tie framework has become more consequential and one of the more still evolving elements of the market design. What initially appeared to be implementation details has raised broader questions around how energy is priced, scheduled, and settled at the boundaries of the current CAISO footprint. CAISO staff has been very willing to adjust course and adopt a transitional approach that preserves almost all needed intertie practices as EDAM goes live. This flexibility is necessary and avoids imposing significant commercial and financial changes in the final months right before launch. We are deeply appreciative of the work CAISO staff has done to get us to this point. From WPTF's perspective, there's only one remaining item of significant disagreement, and I bring this before you today because I believe it must be considered within the broader purpose of EDAM and moving to independent West-wide governance. So here it is. EDAM implementation maintains the ability for economic bids on current CAISO interties, except in one circumstance. On an intertie between the CAISO and an EDAM entity, only resources with an RA or RPS contract with a California load serving entity will be able to economically offer on the intertie. All other resources must self-schedule on the EDAM border. This policy fragments liquidity and creates unequal treatment among market participants based on commercial arrangements rather than physical capability or system needs. While I appreciate the purpose of this policy is to improve power flow modeling by limiting the amount of capacity on these interties, from a market efficiency, and even more importantly, I think, from a West-wide perspective, we believe all resources located outside EDAM entities should be able to economically offer on these interties, not just the ones with contracts with California LSCs. Again, CAISO staff has been very willing to work with us on these challenging issues. We ask that you, though, encourage staff and leadership to move just a little bit further for this transitional approach, especially because this ask does not require additional IT changes and will simplify requirements. One last time, our ask is just that all resources outside EDAM areas can economically offer in at the current interties, not just the resources with California contracts. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to the discussion tomorrow.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Bentley. Silas, is there anybody else in the queue for public comment?
Nope, there are no further hands in the queue.
Excellent. We will move right along. We have the decision on the October 28th, 2025 general session minutes. I'll turn this to Roger.
Thank you, Chair Wagner. Can I have a motion from the governing body to approve the October 28, 2025 general session minutes for the governing body?
So moved. And I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, governing body. The motion passes.
Thank you, Roger. Next up, we have Elliot Mainzer to provide the CEO report on what he wants to share with us in the CEO report.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Chair Wagner and Vice Chair Campbell, members of the Western Energy Markets Governing Body. It's a pleasure to be with you and all of today's participants for our last meeting of what I think has been a truly transformational 2025. And I think by all accounts, this was certainly another highly productive year of shared progress on market development, governance evolution, and stakeholder engagement. And although Chair Wagner, you certainly not afraid to steal any of my thunder, I do think it does merit taking a few minutes to reflect on each of these elements, as they really were some material developments, and I'd like to take just a little bit more time. And certainly throughout the year, as noted, we made significant progress towards next year's launch of the extended day-ahead market, including the start of crucial implementation activities such as market simulation and training for scheduling coordinators and other parties. This implementation, as you know, is an enormous lift. And I'd like to offer just sincere thanks to the staffs at PacifiCorp, Portland General, obviously the ISO, and the other organizations who are working so hard to keep us on track for go live next year. As you know, and again, I think worth noting again, we received very strong validation of EDM's design back on August 29th when the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission issued 3 separate EDM-related orders. 2 of these orders approved tariff changes requested by PacifiCorp and Portland General, allowing them to join EDAM in 2026. And the third order approved ISO tariff revisions on the topic of congestion revenue allocation that were developed through an expedited, yet I would say highly inclusive stakeholder process. And while the ISO will continue working with stakeholders on a long-term congestion revenue allocation approach, these approvals provided additional support for the day-ahead market's 2026 launch, and really a strong endorsement of its fundamental design parameters. In 2025, FERC also accepted an agreement between the ISO and the Imperial Irrigation District to join both the Western Energy Imbalance Market and EDAM in October of 2028. And in October, NV Energy submitted its formal request to the Public Utilities Commission of Nevada to join EDAM in 2028, and that docket is proceeding forward at this time. As of today, the lineup for entities committing to join the new market next year is PacifiCorp and Portland General will both be going live in 2026. Public Service Company of New Mexico, the Balancing Authority of Northern California, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, and the Turlock Irrigation District all have a planned entry for 2027, and the Imperial Irrigation District planned entry in 2028. And we'll, of course, continue to engage with other parties who are finalizing their market choice and due diligence. Of course, 2025 also saw really monumental progress on independent governance with the passage back in September of Assembly Bill 825, which I really think was one of the more consequential energy policy developments in the West in recent years. The bill, as you all know, calls for establishment of an independent regional organization to oversee Western electricity markets. And if the Board of Governors finds that certain conditions have or will be met, and we have all confidence that those conditions are going to come together, and already appreciate the incredible work that's going on with the Formation Committee, including the passage of the initial bylaws and formation documents just last week. An important but transitional step towards fully independent governance was also taken earlier in the year when step 1 of the Westwide Governance Pathways Initiative was triggered with Public Service Company of New Mexico's decision to join EDAM, and that moved the primary decision role on Western energy markets to the Western Energy Markets Governing Body, an authority, of course, that will be exercised later today on the topic of gas resource management. In support of EDAM implementation, our stakeholder engagement and customer experience team completed development of a full EDAM training curriculum, including a self-paced computer-based training suite and instructor-led training modules, all of which were very well attended. We've also implemented a new EDAM scheduling certification process for scheduling coordinators who intend to become EDAM certified. And I know Joanne Serena and her whole team have really appreciated the incredible participation in those training programs. Also in September, the ISO delivered customized WEM training for the body of state regulators, which included public utility commissioners and commission staff from across the region. I think the session drew 54 participants and focused on the fundamentals of ISO markets with practical, relevant content tailored to participants' needs. I think this training sparked lively discussion, Q&A, and really appreciate the feedback we received from attendees indicating that it was time well spent and deeply appreciated. I did include a statistic in my report. Over the course of the year, the ISO hosted 142 stakeholder meetings with 12,299 participants. That's quite a level of engagement for 2025. This year, of course, also marked, as Rebecca noted, another strong performance by the ISO's Western Energy Imbalance Market, which of course is the fundamental platform on which we're building EDAM. In its third quarter benefits reports, the real-time market reported 412 million in production cost savings participants, pushing total cost savings since the market's inception in 2014 to 7.82 billion, along with major contributions to reliability during summer and winter extreme weather events. Really quite a consequential 2025. And as we turn the corner into 2026, we of course remain laser focused on EDAM implementation and launch. We're going to continue supporting establishment of the new regional organization and implementing relevant activities, including close coordination with the West-wide Governance Pathways Formation Committee on the future stakeholder engagement model. As part of that transition, of course, we'll also be delivering to the legislature the required study of the bill's impacts on jobs in California and the first annual report on AB 825's effect on the bulk electric system, which is due by February 1st, 2026. Both of these reports, of course, will be produced in close coordination with our state partners and stakeholders. In closing, this has been a highly productive, and I think for all of us, a very memorable year. I'd like to also extend my personal thanks to the Western Energy Markets Governing Body for your support and guidance in 2025. I'd also like to thank our many partners and stakeholders for their engagement and input during these transformational times. And finally, of course, let me express my appreciation to the people of the ISO for their tremendous dedication, hard work on behalf of the public that we serve. And so wishing all of you a safe and peaceful holiday season. And as I turn it back to you, Chair Wagner, I'd be happy to take any questions. Much appreciated.
Member Konziolka.
Elliot, thank you for that report. And I do have a question regarding your written submittal.
Yes.
As you know, I've got a personal interest in the SunZia project, and you indicated that progress has been made and that the operational control of that line might occur later on this month. So that would indicate that the line is energized now and it is in the middle of system checkout. And I was just confirming this. This is just really fantastic news.
You're exactly right, Rob. It's been wonderful, a tremendous collaboration with the Pattern team, really just a sort of leading edge development, one of the most sophisticated bipolar HVDC pieces of infrastructure in the world. And it's been a tremendous pleasure to actually be energizing that line and taking the steps to get it under CAISO operational control. So yes, it's been a big piece of development and another major resource which will be operating here in the West in the months ahead. So thanks for noting that.
Yeah. Congratulations to you and everybody on the ISO team and making this happen.
Appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments for Elliot? All right, thank you, and thanks. That was a busy year. Even you laid out in more detail than I was could even remember. Appreciate that. Next, we'll turn to an update from the body of state regulators. With us today is Chair Gabriel Aguilera from the New Mexico Public Regulation Commission. I will turn it over to you for an update.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, and members of the governing body. And thanks for the opportunity once again to provide an update. And Chair Wagner, we also appreciate the collaboration and engagement with the governing body. Also, thank you for noting that earlier. Since my last report at the end of October, Bosser has been pretty busy on the administrative front. So we recently approved our 2026 business plan and budget. We also elected Bosser Vice Chair, Commissioner John Hammond of Idaho, to serve as the representative for the Bosser on the regional organization for Western Energy Nominating Committee. And Commissioner Dumit of Washington was elected to serve as the Bosser representative to the WEM nominating committee. And so really the Bosser appreciates both of their willingness to serve in those very important roles. So the Bosser also reelected Commissioner Hammond and me to continue serving in our leadership roles for 2026. And so we're very much looking forward to continuing this position for one more term. We also had a change in membership from the Oregon Commission. Chair Letha Tani has rolled off the Bosser. I know many of you know her personally, and just want to share my appreciation for all of her work over the years. She's been an invaluable asset to the evolution of the Bosser and the market and governance discussions in the region. So we really wish her all the best, but not all hope is lost because we also have an opportunity to welcome Commissioner Karin Power of Oregon to the Bosser. So that change is effective already, and so we very much look forward to um, Commissioner Power's engage. It's power without an S, but Power's engagement and collaboration with the Bosser. Um, since this is the final governing body meeting of the year and Bosser's last report to you all, thought it'd be appropriate to provide a brief recap of the work the Bosser has done this year. And I think it was a pretty active year. So first, Bosser devoted significant effort to reviewing a range of policy matters. In the beginning of the year, we focused on fast start pricing, which is now on hold, but we examined both DMM's perspective and the historical treatment of the issue at FERC. So that was a very good learning opportunity for the Bosser. Members also spent considerable time reviewing and developing an understanding of the congestion revenue allocation issues arising from PacifiCorp's EDAM filing in the spring. Bosser also continues to be actively engaged in the Pathways Initiative as the RO advances toward formal incorporation in Delaware at the beginning of next year. Bosser played an active role in the nominating committee process with the successful appointment of Member Smith to the governing body this summer. We held two in-person meetings, our spring meeting in La Jolla and our fall meeting in Portland. And throughout the year, we also monitored the evolving work of the RIF, and that process continues to develop. So lastly, on 2025, Bosser, in partnership with WEB and the ISO, hosted the annual electricity markets training for members, which was incredibly useful as we've heard. And so this year's training focused on EDAM and was very beneficial to us. So next, I want to talk a little bit about what's coming up for us. So Bosser is currently following various WEM related initiatives at the ISO. First, the Price Formation Enhancement Initiative. Bosser has spent time this year understanding the various market components that fall under this initiative, including scarcity pricing, BAA level market power mitigation. And in fact, at our meeting last Friday, we heard from ISO staff on the latest developments taking place in that initiative. So we look forward to learning more and continuing to engage in that initiative as it progresses. So Bosser is also monitoring the storage design and modeling initiative that's underway. And we have a particular focus on uplift and default energy bid design elements. As mentioned in my last report, Bosser shared its advice last fall in support of the modified bid cost recovery formula with an emphasis on a more holistic review in the future. So Bosser appreciates the ISO taking up this effort now, and we are looking forward to continuing to provide regulator input into the design process. So additionally, Bosser is aware that the governing body is considering a decision on the gas resource management policy that's before you today. While this is not an initiative on which the Bosser actively engaged, WEM staff has provided the committee with an overview of the policy design, and Bosser is attentive to the proposal under consideration. Bosser is not offering any consensus positions. The committee recognizes that certain adjustments to the framework are intended to accommodate fuel cost variability across the border. I'm sorry, across the broader WEM market footprint. Should the proposal be adopted today, Bosser will monitor the ISO and DMM market data analysis in the coming years as it becomes available, and will pay close attention to cost verification practices, uplift allocation, and utility procurement impacts to ensure that these changes um, serve the public interest and don't result in adverse impacts. Almost done here. So as we're all closing out the year, on behalf of the Bosser, just want to acknowledge the effort from the entire West, from the ISO staff, the governing body, and fellow state commissioners. 2025 was an extremely busy year, and there are some pretty good wins to go along with that. And I mean, I guess I don't need to tell you about them because you're very well aware. But the level of engagement and collaboration by all this year has made it possible to navigate very unique and complex issues. And really, I think we're able to advance and make really meaningful progress throughout the region. So thank you to all who are listening, to the governing body, ISO staff, and everybody else. So looking ahead, our next meeting for the Bossers on January 9. That's all I have. So on behalf of the Bosser, thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you, Chair Aguilera. Any questions or comments from the governing body? Member Kanzioka.
Chair Aguilera, I just wanted to express my appreciation, as you noted, for Commissioner Letha Tani, now Chair Tani. And I'm certain everybody had the same experience I had. She was always really well informed. She was energetic. She was just terrific to work with. And she's one of the very first people who reached out to me when I joined the governing body. And I appreciated pretty much all her contributions that she made on behalf of Bosser and making EIM better and getting EDAM approved and moving us forward in markets. And so on behalf of myself and I hope the entire governing body, just express our appreciation for all the good work that she's done.
Thank you.
We will let her know.
Yeah, please pass on our best wishes, and we'll miss her, but look forward to working with Commissioner Power. Thank you for noting that there's no S. And again, just thank you all for it. Commissioners have a lot of things on their plate, so we appreciate your commitment and your colleagues' commitment to working on these issues with us. So we will see you in the new year.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
All right. Let's turn now to the Regional Issues Forum update. We have the RIF chair, Lindsay Schleckaway from NV Energy. And oh, you are in queue. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, and members of the governing body. Thank you for inviting me to share an update from the Western Energy Markets Regional Issues Forum. Since my last update at the October 28th Western Energy Markets Governing Body meeting, the RIF has continued to focus on advancing the RIF Enhancements Project. On November 7th, we published the draft final proposal and received comments from 10 stakeholders, including the Pathways Launch Committee. We greatly appreciate the time and effort stakeholders have invested in providing thoughtful feedback throughout this process. These comments have been posted on our website and can be viewed there. The liaisons are currently reviewing these comments and will incorporate them into the forthcoming final proposal. Looking ahead, the first few months of 2026 will be dedicated to refining key elements of the proposal, such as the sector sponsor role and developing a high-level implementation plan. These details will be included in our next paper, which will serve as the final proposal. We anticipate working closely with CAISO and Pathways during this phase and will remain cognizant of the feedback that we've received thus far. In addition to the RIF enhancements, we have identified tentative dates for our 2026 in-person meetings. We plan to hold our in-person roundtable discussion on the CAISO catalog and roadmap in Folsom, California on March 16th. Our intention for our second in-person meeting is to hold a meeting on June 16th, which should be in conjunction with this governing body's June meeting. And finally, we are planning to hold our final meeting of 2026 prior to the CAISO Symposium on October 5th in Sacramento, California. Lastly, as we close out 2025, we are reviewing sector distribution lists posted on our website and are requesting updates from stakeholders. A notice will be sent out via the CAISO daily briefing in the coming days, asking organizations to verify their sector alignment and advise liaisons for any necessary changes. This concludes my Regional Issues Forum update. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Lindsay. And I just realized, looking at my notes, that I left off the portion of my thankfulness in my opening comments about the RIF. I just want to acknowledge the hard work and commitment you all have been displaying this year and in years before. You've taken on a lot. You've brought a lot of issues to the forefront for us. And I'm certainly grateful for the commitment that the liaisons and the sectors are putting into this. It helps improve our process. That's why it was designed. And just wanted to acknowledge all of your good work for this last year. I will turn it to any of the governing body members if you have any comments or questions. Okay. Thanks, Lindsay. We'll see you next year.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Next, we're moving on to our decisional item. This is the decision on gas resource management. I'm going to turn it to Roger Collington, and then he will turn it over to Elliot Manzer.
Sorry, once again, I should know not to be on mute. Thank you, Chair Wagner. My first order of business would be to note any public comment letters. We did not receive any public comment letters for agenda item number 6. And so at this point, let me turn it over to our President and CEO, Elliot Manzer, with some introductory remarks.
Well, thank you, Roger. And again, to Chair Wagner and Vice Chair Campbell, members of the governing body, wanted to just, as we turn to this important decisional item today, the Gas Resource Management Policy Initiative, I wanted to just offer a few comments before we dive into the details of the segment. In particular, I'd like to share just a few of the few changes in how we are going to be presenting market design initiatives and briefings going forward. As we've been discussing for some time, our goal is to bring more stakeholder voices to the forefront in decisional presentations and briefings, giving them an opportunity to share their experiences and insights from their engagement throughout the policy development process. To that end, today you'll hear directly from several stakeholders who were key partners throughout the working group in policy development for gas resource management. They will share why this initiative matters to them, what solutions were considered, and their perspectives on the proposed approach. After that, ISO management will present the final recommendation, and as always, we'll open the floor for general stakeholder comments. To kick things off today, I'm pleased to introduce Ali Mace, who recently joined the ISO as Senior Advisor for Regional Stakeholder Affairs. Many of you know Ali from her previous role at BPA and her leadership position as previous chair of the Regional Issues Forum. We're thrilled to have her on board and look forward to your feedback on this new format. So with that, I'll turn it over to Ali. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Elliot. Good afternoon, Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, and members of the governing body. I am excited to be here today to introduce the Gas Resource Management Primary Authority decisional item and to introduce the presenting stakeholders. Go to the next slide, please. As you heard in Elliot's introduction, today's presentation will include 3 stakeholder perspectives on this initiative and the recommendation. Today, I will begin with a brief overview of the stakeholder process to provide some perspective on the level and depth of stakeholder involvement in the Gas Resource Management Initiative. 3 stakeholders will then share their unique perspectives on the initiative, addressing why it was important to them, their key areas of interest in the initiative, and some perspective on the proposal. I'd like to express our appreciation to the 3 who are here today for both their extensive involvement in the initiative and for joining us here today. So first, you'll hear from Andy Husted, who's the gas trading leader at Idaho Power Company. Second, Jonah Cabral, transmission and market policy analyst at Portland General Electric. And finally, Todd Ryan, the manager of the FERC and CAISO policy team at Pacific Gas and Electric. Each of these 3 comes from a unique position in the market and a unique position geographically, and will bring an added dimension as you consider the recommendation. Finally, Danny Johnson will present management's recommendation, and we will try to hold to take questions for all presenters after Danny's presentation. Let's move to the next slide, please. So for a little bit of background to start off, I'd like to share a bit of history on the Gas Resource Management Initiative, where it came from, and the path that it's followed. So this initiative was requested initially as part of the 2023 Policy Initiative Catalog and Roadmap process. Stakeholders, mainly those from the Desert Southwest, identified the opportunity to address concerns related to managing gas resources in the WEIM prior to EDAM launch and requested an initiative to address those concerns. They specifically requested expedited initiatives related to managing gas system limitations and the misalignment of the gas and electric market timing to support system reliability and market functionality. Although those initial requests came from entities in the Desert Southwest, interest in this initiative covered a much broader geographic region, as you will hear from today's presenters. In follow-on to the Policy Initiative Catalog request, at the June 2023 Regional Issues Forum meeting, a panel of 5 stakeholders from across the WEIM footprint and the ISO discussed the gas management issues and highlighted the need for an initiative to address the concerns. In response to those requests, we launched a stakeholder working group in July 2023 to address gas coordination and experience with a centralized bid-in, day-ahead, and real-time market across the broader Western footprint. After the start of the working group, the 2024 Policy Initiatives Roadmap prioritized the Gas Resource Management Initiative and proposed policy development in 2025 with a decision in Q4 of 2025, where we are today. And that image at the bottom of the slide just shows where the Gas Resource Management Initiative was in the 2024 Policy Initiatives Catalog. Let's go to the next slide, and I just want to give a little bit of a sense of the process we've been through and the level of stakeholder engagement throughout this. So over the past year and a half, stakeholders have played a very significant role in contributing to this initiative. Working groups were held from July 2023 to May 2024. During this time, entities participated in 8 working group meetings, submitted 28 unique sets of comments in 7 comment periods, shared their perspective through 3 different stakeholder surveys, and participated in discussions that led to 4 discussion papers. In January of 2025, the Gas Resource Management Initiative transitioned from a working group into policy development. As part of policy development, the stakeholders participated in 5 policy development meetings. They submitted 25 sets of comments in 4 comment periods and participated in 1 technical workshop. We released 4 paper iterations during this period, and we're grateful for the stakeholder review and feedback on those. So we'd like to acknowledge and thank all who participated to steer the direction of the policy and contribute their expertise to the recommendation being presented today. So with that, I'd like to move to the next slide and welcome Andy Husted, gas trading leader at Idaho Power Company, to share Idaho Power's perspective on this policy initiative.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Ali, and thank you, governing body members, for the opportunity to present and share Idaho Power's perspective on these gas policy related matters. My name is Andy Husted. I'm the gas transactional leader at Idaho Power, and my duties include managing the physical and financial procurement of natural gas, and I've now mixed in and added a little bit of organized policy market to my responsibilities. I want to thank CAISO and the Gas Resource Management Group for allowing me the time and opportunity to discuss why the GRM group was so vitally important for Idaho Power, as well as honing in on some of the highlights and outcomes and give you a little lay of the Northwest gas landscape. I also want to hit on some of the issues that we look forward to continue to work on with the GRM. Next slide, please. Jumping into it, I want to start out by outlining why the GRM was important for Idaho and the issues that were addressed through this forum. The gas markets that CAISO knows and experiences are modeled using the PG&E and SoCal systems, which have very different gas dynamics than in the Northwest and in Idaho in terms of pipelines, storage capabilities, constraints, different gas hubs, which are subject to their own supply and demand variables. Now, all of this translated into a single fuel zone default energy bid calculation. Now, here comes Idaho Power with all of its natural gas baggage. And what we really worked on with the GRM group is coming to an understanding of our gas landscape and how we represent and recover gas costs, given the fact that we reside in the middle of a bi-directional pipeline, which is relatively unusual. We are subject to different pipeline constraints, dynamics, which can effectively lock us out from purchasing from a cheaper price gas hub and forcing us to buy at a higher price hub. So we worked with the GRM group to explain our geographical gas landscape, which presents challenges in the EIM and will present more challenges in the EDAM, in that we buy and sell from multiple gas hubs every day. Our primary pipeline, Northwest Pipeline, has multiple interconnections, meaning gas flows are influenced by other regions, and we have limited storage capabilities that we may or may not have the ability to access, which I'll explain later. And to complicate matters further, we had to come to a common understanding that we have different definitions than California for things like entitlements and operational flow orders. Next slide. So next, I want to highlight our gas procurement operations and some of the challenges we face. We transact at 3 fuel hubs, Stanfield, Sumas, and Rockies. We have transport capacity which flows south on Northwest Pipeline, starting at the Sumas gas hub, which is on the border of Washington and Canada. But we don't have enough Sumas transport to fuel our load requirements. So from there, we have southbound capacity from the Stanfield gas hub in Oregon. Now, if there's a constraint, for example, at the Chehalis compressor station in Washington, we're locked out of Sumas, which typically means that Sumas will become the cheapest price gas hub. From there, we're forced to move to Stanfield or Rockies to procure gas. Now, if there's a constraint in what we refer to as the gorge on the border of Washington and Oregon, we'll be locked out of purchasing gas from Sumas, and we'll be locked out of our ability to pull gas from storage from the Jackson Prairie storage facility in Washington. Now our option is to buy gas at Stanfield or Rockies. From there, if there's a constraint at the Meacham compressor station, which is just south of Stanfield, we'll be locked out of Sumas, Jackson Prairie storage, and Stanfield. This effectively eliminates the Canadian gas supply coming into the Northwest and Idaho. Canadian gas supply makes up about 2/3 of the supply on Northwest Pipeline. So when we have constraints like I just mentioned, the gas has to be supplied or procured from the Rockies region, which will cause Rockies gas to be the most expensive gas on the system. And now I just want to walk through one last example. On top of the constraints I just described, if there's a constraint above the Rockies hub, north of Rockies at Pegram, we may have to buy gas delivered to our city gate. And because we sit in the middle of a bidirectional pipe, there's always gas flowing by our plant. So suppliers can simply drop off gas to our plants. But when we do this by deliver gas, we're often subjected to paying the highest price on the system. And buying delivered gas entails that we pay above the offer price because we'll pay someone the cost of their capacity transport on top of the fuel price, which is one of the reasons why the bid-ask spread may not capture the fuel costs we incur or pay. So next slide. This is why it's so important for us to have a default energy bid that captures the fact that we purchase from 2 gas hubs every day, and many days we're purchasing from all 3 of the gas hubs I just referenced, Sumas, Stanfield, and Rockies for our Idaho gas fleet. The question quickly arose is, how do we mitigate pricing risk when we're limited to one master file fuel zone? As we all know, price spreads arise quickly on the day, so taking 5 business days to change the fuel zone in the master file is impractical and doesn't cover our fuel cost exposure. And by the time we change the zone in our master file, the spreads may have flipped back. So to solve this problem, Idaho started working with CAISO to change our default energy bid in March of 24, which was finalized in December of 24. However, conversations started much earlier, and we finally settled on a negotiated DEB, which includes the hire of 2 market hubs. This was a big win for us and covers most of our exposure to the fuel costs at multiple gas hubs. However, the DEB still does not cover commitment costs. Next slide. Now, keep in mind that we still have exposure to the 3rd fuel zone in our default energy bid. So prior to these changes brought about by the GRM, any reference level change request would have been denied if the gas we bought is at a location that's different than the fuel zone in the master file. And a prerequisite for the after the fact cost recovery is submitting a reference level change request first. Submitting a reference level change request is cumbersome and impractical due to the process and timing, and we would have been denied anyways because the gas purchased would have been at a zone that was outside of what's in our master file. So we suggested to the GRM group that we need to take a hard look at after the fact cost recovery, and CAISO listened to our concerns and worked with us. The after the fact cost recovery process now has been simplified. So instead of submitting a reference level change request prior to applying for after the fact cost recovery, we can show documentation such as a screenshot from the pipeline EBB, the electronic bulletin board, which will show the constraints that forced us to buy gas at the higher price hub. And along those lines, CAISO is committed to streamlining the reference level change process in cyber, and we look forward to those continued conversations. Lastly, I want to hit on the GPI. That's the gas price index adjustment. Today, the gas price index adjustment is not as relevant to us because of our DEB, which again includes the hire of 2 gas hubs, covers most of our exposure to the gas we pay. However, the GPI does consider commitment costs, and as we look forward to the day-ahead markets, this will be more important to us. And through the changes brought about through the GRM, for new EDAM entrants, the ISO will look at historical fuel costs and adjust not only the energy bid scaler, but will look at the commitment cost scaler and make adjustments appropriately based on historical expenses. So wrapping up, I again want to thank CAISO staff for taking up this stakeholder initiative, and specifically the GRM group for listening and working with Idaho. I know we would not be here today had it not been for the collaborative efforts which came up with some practical solutions. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. With that, we will turn to Jonah Cabral for Portland General Electric's perspective on the final proposal.
Okay, so yeah, hi, good afternoon to Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, and members of the governing body. So my name is Jonah Cabral, and I'm here on behalf of Portland General Electric, or PGE, a WEM participant and a future extended day-ahead market participant next year. Next slide. So just going to touch on a couple things at a high level here. First off, the final proposal for the gas resource management working group is an actual, true, meaningful improvement over the current operations and has important elements for EDAM readiness and EDAM participation. And also, I want to acknowledge that the CAISO staff has been very responsive in leading engagement on this topic and understanding regional perspectives and kind of the regional distinction that is a key driver of the need for this whole initiative. So from the PGE perspective, we want to make sure that the gas resource management tools, they function, that they can function for regions where the non-CAISO gas systems are distinct. Physical conditions are different, and so that understanding is kind of the framing for kind of these takeaways on the final proposal. Next slide, please. So at a high level, this slide is just demonstrating the regional nature and how the gas system in the Pacific Northwest is just distinct, regionally distinct. There's comparatively limited gas storage, longer haul delivery, greater winter volatility, and in addition, EDAM timelines intersect distinctly and differently from timely gas nominations in that EDAM environment. So there could be procurement risk for gas, if the tools aren't well aligned. So that's kind of the physical reality that some of the outcomes of this stakeholder initiative have helped to address. Next slide. So this slide here is just to help visualize a little bit some of these challenges. And again, like I said, if you look at the figure on the left, you can see that there's just limited underground storage compared to other regions. You can see there's just a couple key storage hubs in the PNW, and in addition, the trading hubs, which are some key trading hubs for us, are circled in the figure on the right. Sumas, Stanfield, Kingsgate. Those trading hubs can be less liquid on aggregate. And so there are key challenges with our regional gas infrastructure. Again, just the long haul interstate pipelines, they can get stressed in winter conditions, and there can be greater exposure to pipeline constraints and same day gas procurement that can be a challenge. So that is why there's a huge value for PG and our regional counterparts as well on having some accurate early price signals and early gas procurement signals. So these graphics kind of set the stage for a couple of the key items that are valuable to PGE in our participation in this working group and are important changes to prepare for EDAM, both for our participation in EDAM, but also for ensuring a scalable, successful EDAM. Next slide. So the again, I'm not going to dive super into the details. I know that CAISO staff will do that later, but I did want to frame this in the Portland general perspective. So the default gas price index adjustment, this is an important tool, and it goes a long way towards actually recognizing the persistent volatility at those aforementioned trading hubs for gas, like Sumas and Stanfield. There's just a lot of volatility in the pricing at those hubs in this region in particular. So this tool is it's kind of a more predictable, repeatable way to reflect actual fuel costs, and it will help us with our recurring reference level change request filings, as previously mentioned. That is key for us operationally. It will allow for more consistent reflection of the fuel prices that that are just fundamentally part of the PNW region and our gas infrastructure here. And this is also very important for our EDAM participation. And the reason is because when you're moving to a single financially binding day-ahead market, that can amplify regional fuel volatility and fuel volatility between regions, right? When you're increasing the scale of that market optimization. So with that, I'll move to the next slide. Thank you. I also wanted to touch on the D+2 advisory, which is another key item for us. And again, the value here is to ensure that there's a reliable early signal for our next day gas needs before the timely nomination deadline for procuring pipeline capacity and gas. So for PGE and for our gas traders, this early signal, that having it be D+2, that will help us procure the correct amount of fuel, right? Avoid under procurement of fuel and also over procurement. We want to be accurate there. And this tool, D+2, having that advanced look at the pricing, will become all the more important for us in our EDAM participation, again, because of the fact that day-ahead awards can drive regional dispatch patterns when you get to the real time, and you need to make fuel decisions accordingly. And again, it all rolls up into both the day-ahead and the real-time market outcomes. Next slide, please. So a couple of closing thoughts. Again, I don't want to get too far into the weeds of the proposal. Want to explain how it impacts Portland General. And I just wanted to focus on, as we implement these tools, we're focused. Our core goal has been to ensure consistent outcomes for the entire EDAM footprint. And so, for example, for the gas price index adjustment, we'll be definitely looking to see, and I know the CAISO staff are going to also be performing this analysis as well, just to see how the new benchmark tests perform at those aforementioned hubs, again, like Sumas or Stanfield, to see how that GPI adjustment is working. Also for the D+2 advisory tool, again, especially under tight system conditions like winter stress conditions, we're going to be seeing how the accuracy and stability of that tool turns out. Again, there's just not that much fuel storage in our region right now. So again, looking to see how those D+2 advisory results end up tracking with final day-ahead outcomes. That will be key as well. And just overall, these are important, I guess, design evolutions to support an effective and successful EDAM. And next slide. Yeah. So in closing, I just want to reiterate, and this is like, I think it's said a lot, but I mean it. Portland General Electric, we mean it. This has been another highly collaborative initiative, and we've built our relationships both with CAISO staff, but also with our regional counterparts. And there's just been a good exchange of regional feedback and of helping to, again, get to a good, durable final proposal here. Again, this is it's a progressive solution, will help with predictability and regional awareness for gas resources in EDAM. And as EDAM expands, gas resource management design is key to supporting a reliable, optimized regional footprint, across the CAISO and non-CAISO external regional market participants. And at Portland General, we are committed to a reliable, scalable EDAM design. And this gas resource management there are some key fixes here, some key changes here that get us closer to that outcome. And so with that, I'll close and just thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Jonah. And now we will turn to our last stakeholder perspective with Todd Ryan from Pacific Gas and Electric. Todd, I will hand it to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the WEM governing body. My name is Todd Ryan. I'm the manager of the FERC CAISO policy team here at PG&E. And over the last 7 years, my sole focus has been on CAISO market design issues, during which I've participated in many stakeholder meetings, including the entire extended day market process and initiative, and all the satellite initiatives that are orbiting EDAM. Today, I'll share my perspective on this orbiting initiative, gas resource management, and why we support the current proposal. Next slide, please. First, it's important that I show you why California and PG&E were not the target audience for this initiative. California's gas system already has a substantial amount of storage that provides flexibility that's really not seen through much of the West. PG&E specifically owns 37 BCF of storage within this, and the whole state has something close to 289 BCF. So California has roughly half of all the gas storage in the West. This gas storage provides contributes to a reliable, liquid, and competitive gas market in California, which we understand isn't seen by some of our EDAM colleagues. Next slide, please. PG&E supports the three main proposals in this gas resource management final proposal. We support the addition of accommodations that CAISO is proposing for the gas cost variation. CAISO's proposal includes flexibility that covers both normal and extreme conditions, allows for new participants to ramp up the learning curve. And as the MSC noted in their opinion, there will always be a tension between the flexibility and verification in these processes. So, precise monitoring and reevaluation will be needed, but we do support this flexibility for our EDAM, prospective EDAM members. Second, back one slide, please. Second, we support the managing the gas burn limitations. California has had a nomogram working successfully for many years now. It's a proven reliability tool, and despite at some points in the initiative, it sounded like the tool might be changed into allowing participants to manage their electric dispatch and optimize their generation portfolio. This is not the way that the final proposal has ended up. We would not have supported the nomogram for that use, but we do support it for the use as a reliability tool only. And finally, PG&E supports the improvement to inform fuel procurement. We anticipate this might be a continued and evolving set of improvements. The D+2 accuracy is effective when conditions are stable, but less so as conditions change. We appreciate really all the hard work that the DMM provides. And again, we have to ask them to keep an eye on this market mechanism as well, to ensure that there aren't any inappropriate dynamics between the two D+2 forecast, bidding, and reference level changes. But again, we'd welcome this additional accuracy in the D+2 as well. Next slide, please. All right, great. So in closing, PG&E really supports the proposal and thinks that this initiative is a positive sign for the future. The process, as the other presenters have noted, was constructive and collaborative across regional differences. It avoided gridlock, swirl. The guardrails worked. DMM and MSC were still able to provide meaningful input to the process. It was an issue that was very targeted to certain stakeholders, and we believe this might be more and more common with the launch of EDAM and the new regional governance structure. So the initiative supported regionalization and ensured equitable market rules. So we do think this was a very strong example for future initiatives to look towards, and really appreciate all the time and effort the CAISO staff, Danny and Sylvie and everyone put in, the DMM and the MSC for their valuable inputs. And again, we strongly support this. Thank you, governing body members, for your time and attention. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, absent any questions for Todd right now, there'll be a chance afterwards. Chairs Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, governing body members. Before I launch in today's presentation, I wanted to thank Allie, Idaho, Portland General, and PG&E for offering their perspectives, and also to thank Sylvie Spewak, who is the policy lead on this. As you heard, she ran an exhaustive and inclusive process that made sure that all the voices in the regional community were heard, and that this policy was directly shaped by their input, as well as Mihir Saha, who led the analysis portion of this project, who really ensured that we're making data-driven policy changes at the ISO. As for myself, my name is Danny Johnson, and I am presenting on behalf of management, the Gas Resource Management Enhancements Decisional Item. Can we go to the next slide? Oh, beat me to it. So there's differences with how gas resources are situated in the West. The differences are both in gas market conditions as well as the underlying physical infrastructure. Andy from Idaho did a really good job of providing a sampling of some of these challenges. And these present as different operational challenges in the EDAM and the WEIM timeframes. In the day-ahead market, resources are going to be scheduled by the day-ahead market. And fuel procurement in this environment is more challenging for a scheduling coordinator due to the timing of the gas and the electric markets. At the time the gas markets are open, the electric markets haven't yet run. So this electric market schedules you're procuring gas to are not known. At the time the electric market is running, the gas market prices are not finalized. So market participants are not able to participate with the finalized index price. All of the uncertainty that arises from this dynamic must be incorporated by market participants in their supply offers. And if you contrast this with today's practice, wherein a resource maintains full control over its resource scheduling, this gets reflected in its WEIM-based schedule, and then incremental economic participation only occurs where real-time fuel is available or flexibility exists. This presents a really substantial change. So adapting the tools, as we're proposing to do today, will ensure that gas resources will be able to successfully participate in an expanded market footprint. Can we go to the next slide? Okay. But before we get into what the changes of the proposal are, this slide provides a high-level snapshot of the market operator's existing process to reflect cost volatility. This is called the reference level change request process, and you've heard it referenced already today. So the market operator calculates resource-specific costs for every resource within its footprint. And this considers the potential fuel costs, the physical generator characteristics, the transportation costs associated with getting that fuel to the generator, taxes. It's pretty intuitive. This is graphically represented in the bottom left-hand corner. It's the blue and darker blue color. And this is the default reference level. So the market operator is calculating this, and then it adds on an additional buffer or safe harbor, whatever you want to call it, to cover volatility, because we do realize that as a market operator, we're not always going to have the most accurate cost information for each specific resource. This is the baseline calculation. The market operator through this process then offers 2 additional steps to reflect additional cost volatility. The first step is the automated reference level change request process, and it's the middle of these 3 bars. This allows market participants to, no questions asked, access additional flexibility to request fuel or to reflect fuel cost volatility. However, it is subject to audit. So the expectation would be additional flexibility is provided, receipts will be kept in case an audit occurs. The third bar on this chart would be the manual reference level change request process. And here, there's really no cap on what a market participant can say their gas costs are. Simply, it is subject to pre-market review by market operator staff. To the extent that that cost is proved valid, the market participant would be able to reflect that cost in their supply offer. One last important note that is changing in this set of enhancements is right now, to access after the fact cost recovery, which is a narrow provision where gas costs aren't recovered, a market participant has to, in all cases, have engaged with this process as a prerequisite for eligibility. Next slide. So management's proposal encompasses 2 distinct types of rule changes. The first set of changes provides greater flexibility for market participants, where warranted, to reflect cost volatility in their supply offers. The second set of changes are to the availability of tools for the management of gas electric reliability. While these tools exist today, they are not broadly available. Management's proposal looks to change this with an eye towards making sure these tools are available when and where warranted anywhere within the market footprint. The third call out on this slide is not decisional. Regardless, management believes it's worth noting as we think it is an improvement in the advisory market information that will be available to stakeholders that can help to inform their fuel procurement decisions. This third bullet was also a specific request from stakeholders. Can we go to the next slide? Okay, so management's proposing to provide gas resources more opportunity to manage fuel cost volatility. And there's 3 different aspects of this proposal that provide additional flexibility. First, management will look to account for systemic differences between the market operator cost estimate and the costs that are faced by market participants. The market operator process for requesting additional flexibility, which we talked about a couple slides ago, is intended to be used infrequently. That's why there's that safe harbor on the default reference level calculation cost. But to the extent that a market participant is relying on this process more often than intended, the market operator would look to account for this additional volatility in its estimate of the underlying fuel costs. This will not change any of the thresholds or flexibility provided by this existing process. Rather, it adjusts for potential inaccuracies of the fuel cost element that serves as an input to all of these processes. And if we can jump ahead to the next slide, there's a simple example that will help to highlight how this will work. So this is very simplified, but consider 2 different resources across 3 different trade days. For resource 1, the market operator is going to estimate their cost to be $3. Their costs come in $3, $3.05, $3.20. All of these costs are within the safe harbor that is provided by the default reference level. So that would be that dashed blue line that you see in the upper 2 charts. Now consider resource 2. The market operator is also estimating costs of $3. Their costs come in at $3.10, $3.40, $3.40. Now those second 2 costs can be reflected in the market through the use of the existing reference level change request process. However, in this example, resource 2 is being forced to use this process much more often than the potentially more gas stable resource who the market operator is better able to estimate their costs. So if you work through the math of how the proposal would work, what the market operator would look to do can really be captured in the bottom right quadrant. The market operator would apply a 106% multiplier to the underlying gas costs. What this does is it accounts for that additional volatility that resource is exposed to that the market operator is not correctly capturing in their cost estimate. So this then moves all three of their trade days within that default reference level and provides them the same amount of upward flexibility within the automated reference level change request process that resource one is able to access. So the areas between those dotted lines should now be similar between the two resources. So that's a really basic example of how we envision this working. Can we go back one slide? Okay, so that's change one. On the second change, management is proposing to improve the advisory information it provides, and we've heard talk about that already. To the extent that it becomes aware of any large variations that may drive different market schedules, it would also look to provide additional flexibility. If the market operator, with our sophisticated forecasting staff and a wide area view of the market, is unable to consistently produce accurate estimates of what potential day-ahead energy schedules are going to be, we believe that market participants may be similarly challenged, and in those cases would look to provide additional flexibility if warranted. Now, to ensure that this change is data-driven, management is not proposing a set percentage at this time. Rather, once the EDIM is up, running, delivering schedules, we'll look to determine how materialized uncertainty affects the market schedules and would look to provide additional flexibility then if warranted. Now, the final change to provide additional flexibility, right side, is to ensure after the fact cost recovery in certain circumstances. So the existing rule set requires a market participant to have accessed that reference level change request process as a prerequisite for after the fact cost recovery. And this makes a lot of sense. It creates the right incentives for market participants to try and reflect their costs in the market. It ensures that they are receiving an incentive compatible dispatch, and it helps the market operator ensure that we're having efficient least cost results. We do, however, recognize that there are select circumstances where a market operator could not have reasonably requested an adjustment through the existing process. And in those select circumstances, we would look to provide after the fact cost recovery. Can we jump ahead 2 slides? Okay, so this is the second major part of the proposal. The market operator has the ability to reflect broad area gas system limitations as a constraint within its market optimization. This is known as a gas nomogram. As an example, the constraint can ensure that a set of resources, given unique heat rates, different positions within the electric system, collectively don't consume more than a certain volume of fuel within a preset amount of time. Now, this tool is exclusively used for reliability purposes. An existing regulatory precedent is clear that market participants should reflect economic portfolio considerations for fuel limitations within their supply offers. But where reliability conditions do exist, the market operator is proposing to have this functionality broadly available. Today, the usage of this constraint is limited to Southern California and the SoCalGas system. So to the extent that the market operator, the gas pipeline operator, and the balancing authority area have determined that this type of constraint is the preferred mechanism to maintain reliable operations of both the gas and the electric systems, management would have the authorization to file at FERC for approval of the usage of this type of constraint. Again, this constraint would only be used for reliability purposes and subject to narrow design guidelines. But having the ability to file at FERC to implement this constraint, as compared to today where a full stakeholder process and governance approval process would have to be conducted, offers both a more efficient usage of market operator and stakeholder resources, and more importantly, provides potentially timely access to a reliability tool during potential adverse system operating conditions. This next topic, as I mentioned earlier, is not decisional. Management possesses the existing tariff authority to make all of the proposed changes. However, as it's part of the package of enhancements to lower barriers to robust EDEM participation, we again believe it's worth noting. The market operator right now runs an advisory 2-day ahead market. This is known as D2. This is getting enhanced as part of EDEM. This is further getting enhanced as part of the Gas Resource Management Stakeholder Initiative. We will look to use better input data and provide more granular information to market participants. The third sub-bullet on this slide is again worth noting. We will now look to provide advisory information beyond 2 days ahead as part of this process. This was a specific request from stakeholders as they believe that this information could help them in their fuel procurement either across weekends or around holidays. But again, all of this is within existing tariff authority. Position of stakeholders. So as you previously heard, this process has been very collaborative, but that doesn't mean there wasn't some level of adversity. The proposed methodology to provide additional flexibility is a compromise solution. It balances implementation feasibility with the additional flexibility that was sought by stakeholders, and we came to that conclusion with stakeholders. There was also some concern expressed about the 2-day ahead advisory information and how it could provide more flexibility, or even the additional flexibility provided as part of the first change I referenced being something that could be abused. We recognize this concern. We would look to monitor as part of our regular practices for any misuse of this additional flexibility. And this is something that the DMM may also consider within their monitoring duties. There was broad support for the changes to provide more flexibility. There was support for making the gas constraint available for usage more broadly within the market footprint and the provisioning of advisory information. But the most significant stakeholder feedback we heard that differed from what you see in the proposal really came from the MSC and a couple stakeholders. And this related to the CAISO's pursuance of the commitment cost and default energy bid policy. This policy, which exists and is on file and has governance approval, would provide up to an additional 300% bidding flexibility on commitment costs, paired with a new test for structural competitiveness that may be influenced by commitment costs. This introduces a lot of binaries into the optimization, non-convexities, temporal implications relating to the resources starting, transitioning, shutting down, and it's fair to say that this is a really complex policy. However, starting in Q1 of 2026, the ISO, and as the market operator, will evaluate with stakeholders the feasibility of implementing the existing policy as designed, and should any changes be determined necessary, would plan to stakeholder those changes through its existing process. In conclusion, management recommends the approval of the proposed changes to the gas resource management tools. This set of proposed enhancements provides additional flexibility for gas resources to reflect their costs within the market dispatch and successfully participate in ISO-administered markets, and ensures that all participating balancing authority areas would have equitable access to market operator reliability tools. That concludes my presentation, but I would be happy to field or take any questions.
Okay. I wasn't anticipating doing questions right now, but let's go ahead and take them. Anita, I think you had your hand up first.
I didn't necessarily have a question. I just want to say I really appreciate this coming back to us and the improvements that have been made in the process. So Danny, thank you for your continued work on this, and I really also appreciated hearing the stakeholders. So I think that's a good plus up to our meetings, and it was well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita.
Andy?
Thank you, Chair Wagner. Yeah, I did have a specific question for Danny. Thank you for the presentation and your team's work on the proposal. So in the proposal, there's discussion of the usability or of the automated reference level change request process, and that's a very important piece of this policy being effective. And there's a commitment stated to look at changes to make that an easier to use tool. Could you, what's sort of the time frame over which that work will be undertaken?
I think that's something that we would be ready to engage with immediately on determining what the proposed changes would be. After that, I would need to kind of pass it back to our some of our internal processes to figure out where that gets prioritized. But understanding that this is something that market participants prioritize and could be a useful feature in EDAM, I think is something that we could accommodate in a reasonable amount of time. And the changes, for example, right now, if a fuel region wants to be switched, or every change has to be done on a resource by resource basis, but there are some cost inputs that might be shared among a subset of resources. So one potential enhancement would be allowing for a single input change to feed into multiple resources rather than a market participant having to select resource by resource what changes they need.
Thank you.
Thank you, Danny. We still have more to go. I think our next up is Market Surveillance Committee member Scott Harvey.
Yes, hi. Actually, this is Ben Hobbs. I'm chair of the MSC, and Scott and I have switched places. Of course, I would have very much had preferred that he would have been able to do this. But I'm kidding, of course. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for inviting me to be here today, Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, and members of the governing body. And on behalf of Scott and also Dr. Jim Bushnell, I'm pleased to present our opinion on gas resource management, which we had adopted last week. So I'll take about 5 minutes to summarize some additional perspectives that we'd like to present to complement what the stakeholders have presented and what Danny has presented. So the general issue of how to reflect gas prices and supply availability in resource offers during periods of gas price volatility for the purpose of market power mitigation has been a continuing concern throughout the ISO's existence. In fact, Jim has been working for the ISO MSC for 27 years. I've been on it for 25 years, and this is a theme that comes up again and again, and will do so in the future. Unfortunately, GRM won't solve all the problems, but in summary, we think it will make a contribution and it is worth adopting. So the problem is that mitigation may cap gas resource offers using ISO calculated reference levels, either default energy bids or commitment cost caps. And lags in updating those caps to reflect current gas market prices can result in inefficient scheduling of resources if the caps are based on materially incorrect estimates of gas price. And this shifts costs, could cause reliability problems even if resources can't get gas, are scheduled when gas is unavailable, for example. So the ISO has implemented important changes over the years to better reflect current gas prices when calculating reference levels. Danny mentioned the CCW initiative of 7 years ago, for example, which was adopted by the board, not yet implemented, but it will be returned to in the coming year, which, by the way, we think is a terrific idea. So there are continuing challenges, particularly in regions outside California with very different gas supply infrastructures, as, for example, Jonah and Andy described in Idaho and the Pacific Northwest, respectively. The Gas Resource Management Initiative is a response to these ongoing challenges. And furthermore, the launch of EDAM will create additional challenges due to the timing of EDAM schedules being posted after the morning gas market for timely nominations, along with the expanded participation of resources in EDAM. The increased power trade among balancing authorities will, of course, provide economic and reliability benefits, but at the same time, it introduces more uncertainty in gas procurement because EDAM schedules, including the portion that supports exports scheduled by EDAM, those schedules won't be posted until after the timely gas market and pipeline scheduling cycle in the morning. There's potential for EDAM schedules to shift gas purchases into the afternoon, evening gas market and nomination cycles. Um, um, as a result, you'll be trying to buy gas after you've been scheduled, and the offers that your schedules are based on may be inconsistent with what the prices wind up being for gas. So difficult to manage gas and price and quantity risk could therefore arise. And so, especially when reference levels might be much lower than market participant offer prices uh, turn out to be because of this volatility of gas that can happen. So we see four goals for gas resource management EDAM. Quickly, first, we want to enable EDAM participants to better reflect gas costs and their offers. Second, we want to improve their ability to anticipate EDAM schedules at the time they buy gas in the morning gas market. Third, you want to allow EDAM participants to qualify for after the fact cost recovery in some additional situations, which Danny described when gas costs aren't reflected in offer prices. And finally, I want to ensure that any market rule changes won't exacerbate locational market power. The initiative addresses these goals by proposing several potential enhancements that Danny Johnson just summarized. And in this opinion, we focus on just three of those enhancements. First, there's one enhancement which would change the calculation of reference levels for resources with atypically high levels of gas cost variability relative to the standard default energy bid calculation. So as Danny explained, this provides those gas-fired generators more ability to reflect gas costs in their offers. So the availability of this flexibility is proposed to be conditioned on the ISO's evaluation of how often resource gas costs fall outside the range covered by today's default calculation. This evaluation could be based, for example, on how frequently a resource makes reference level change requests, which doesn't happen very often these days, but will likely happen, or market participants will want to make more often in the future. Or it could be based on other information such as recent fuel costs. In the opinion, we notice some challenges to doing this, for example, in a manner that's consistent and equitable across resources in the West, given their very different supply and gas infrastructure and market conditions. The details of the design of this modification of reference levels matters. And as Todd from PG&E mentioned, too much flexibility might increase risks to local market power, but inadequate offer flexibility may deter participation in EDAM or motivate imposition of EDAM export constraints more often than intended, reducing the benefits of EDAM participation. And as I just said, Todd mentioned this trade-off, and this has to be carefully considered. Okay, the second enhancement consists of additional rules to enable after-the-fact recovery of gas costs during supply disruptions, as Danny mentioned. The third enhancement concerns changes, improvements, advisory market runs prior to the integrated forward market execution to improve availability within the timelines of gas nominations. The improved availability of fuel procurement forecasts through day D+2. We discussed several challenges that need to be reckoned with in trying to improve the accuracy of these forecasts. And these include the following three. The accuracy of D+2 forecasts for subregions of the West is what matters, and that may be more difficult to get right than average gas price levels to the West. Second, the effect of time varying gas prices and the dependence of gas prices in D+2 upon today's and tomorrow's and yesterday's gas prices may be quite complex. And third, it's desirable to have careful evaluation of the predictive accuracy of the forecast system prior to go live. Because as Jonah from Portland Gas Electric pointed out, if forecasts are reliable, they will be useful. But if they can't consistently be relied upon, especially during times of high gas price volatility, that would need to be factored. That reality would need to be factored into rules impacting gas purchases and gas-fired generation offers and operating practices. And as Danny mentioned, there is presently the proposal provides some flexibility in terms of what precisely the ISO can do and will allow in terms of flexibility to be based upon experience. Okay, in sum, we believe that the changes proposed by staff in the GRM initiative should provide some valuable information and flexibility to market participants, and therefore are worth pursuing as long as the implementation costs are reasonable. Now, looking beyond the GRM initiative, because that won't solve all the issues that arise in electric gas coordination, there are further market enhancements that are needed. First, market participants have raised concerns about the usability of the reference level change request process for requesting adjustments to gas costs, noting that it is complex and tedious at the moment. I mean, for example, between 2021 and 2023, only 8 of 72 manual reference level adjustments were approved. So there weren't a lot of adjustments requested, but of those that were requested, very few were approved. So the members of the MSC are not market participants. We don't have any visibility of the complexity of the bidding process or the automated processes for submitting information needed for reference level change requests, especially when there are multiple generating units and tight ISO timelines, much tighter than what you see in Eastern ISOs. So we can only point to the concerns that have been expressed by market participants. Based on those concerns, we support the ISO's commitment to enhance the scheduling infrastructure business rules, SIBR, to make it easier for scheduling coordinators to submit reference level adjustments. Although adjustments are infrequently submitted now, market participants are likely to want to resort to them much more often in the future. Okay, the second enhancement we think is needed. There's a need to more easily account for cost changes associated with unit fuel switching, similar to what the Eastern ISOs already have. Third, the likely imperfections, inevitable imperfections in after-the-fact recovery process for costs make it likely that some gas costs will still be left unrecovered, even with that process in place. Moreover, the bulk of the out-of-market cost recovery, the costs that are recovered would be allocated to balancing area load and bilateral exports, and that will tend to shift costs incurred to support export schedules from a balancing authority onto either within balancing area loads or loads both of the balancing area operator and other load serving entities within the balancing area, or onto exports within the balancing area. So we don't view this as an acceptable design in terms of the incentives it provides for scheduling exports or from the point of view of equity. We don't see this as being an acceptable approach for allocating unrecovered gas costs attributable to ISO reference levels. Okay, the fourth enhancement that we think is needed is, and actually the one that we're most concerned about looking forward to is Danny mentioned, which is the implementation of the CCDEBI initiative 7 years ago to address the present absence of any test for supply or market power in capping commitment costs. So the present system means that commitment costs of all gas units will continue to be mitigated in each and every dispatch interval in real time in each and every hour in the day-ahead market. This lack of a test means that units that lack market power will be subject to potentially inefficient mitigation. Now, on the other hand, the flexibility offered by having a market power test for commitment costs might provide units that truly possess market power with overly generous offer bounds, and that may be also result of the flexibility in this proposal. We believe that the development of a workable test for market power and commitment costs is overdue. It will have to be fairly finely tuned to strike that right balance between under and over mitigation, but we think that it would improve efficiency in the market. So we very much welcome the ISO's commitment to hold a stakeholder process next year to address commitment cost cap changes. The importance of this process to long run EDAM and Western energy imbalance market success means that it should move forward on a fast track. So thank you. Best wishes for the holidays, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Hobbs, and sorry I was going off script on who I thought was supposed to be up, so apologies for getting that mixed up.
It's a compliment. It's a compliment to be confused with Scott. He's a dear colleague without whom we could not be near as useful as we are.
Well, that's very nice. Any comments or questions from governing body? Thank you, Dr. Hobbs. Thanks for all of your work this year, and Happy New Year, and we'll see you next year.
Okay, thanks very much. See you soon.
Thank you. Next up, we have DMM, and according to my schedule, and there you are, Adam. We are ready for DMM's perspective.
Okay, great. Well, good afternoon, Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, and governing body members. Thank you for the opportunity today to share DMM's views on the gas resource management proposal. At the highest level, DMM supports the ISO's proposed changes to gas resource management. Support is an incremental improvement that will better facilitate the participation of gas resources in EDAM and the WEIM. We support the proposed changes to provide additional gas price flexibility and default values and reasonableness thresholds that are used in the automated reference level change request process. And importantly, the ISO makes clear that this process is not intended to establish default values and reasonableness thresholds that capture gas price volatility driven by extreme or outlier events. We don't believe it's appropriate to allow excessive flexibility that would capture all gas price volatility by default, nor do we believe such an approach is necessary, as it's the role of the manual reference level change request process to capture extreme gas prices during outlier events. We appreciate that EDAM participation may situate resources differently than today in the WEIM. However, we believe it's important to note that through analysis of reference level change request usage data, we do not see any evidence that existing processes are significantly flawed or have resulted in excessive use of the reference level change request process. DMM understands stakeholders have expressed specific concerns over the timing requirements for the ISO's manual reference level change request process. DMM would have preferred a proposal that introduced more flexibility in the manual reference level change request process, for example, by allowing manual reference level changes after 8 a.m. However, we view the ISO's approach to providing additional gas price flexibility as it's described in the final proposal as an incremental improvement. The final proposal includes other elements which DMM supports. We support additional transparency and improvement of the 2-day ahead or D+2 advisory schedules. recognizing that these will be subject to some error and should not be the sole input to gas procurement decisions. We also support the proposed functionality that would allow increased reasonableness thresholds for all resources when the D+2 forecast differs significantly from day-ahead forecast and awards. We support the ISO's proposed improvements to the bid submission system to accommodate reference level changes for multiple resources simultaneously, if such improvements can be made at relatively low cost. We support the proposal to allow after-the-fact cost recovery due to unforeseen physical pipeline disruptions, even in instances where no reference level change request was submitted. And finally, we support the proposed change framework to evaluate implementation of a gas nomogram in conjunction with pipeline operators, as has been done in the ISO and informed by FERC precedent. So in summary, DMM supports all the elements of the ISO's proposed changes. While we believe the added flexibility could further enhance the manual reference level change request process, we do view the ISO's final proposal as a sufficiently data-driven incremental improvement. So that concludes my summary of DMM's views. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Questions from the governing body for Mr. Swadley? Okay, thank you so much. Oh, Anita.
The only notation I had on this was, and it was regard to MSC and DMM, and that's, just confirming that the bid, let's see, to address the concern, the MSC encouraged the ISO to place a high priority on implementing the dynamic market power mitigation approach for commitment cost bids, and that was part of the commitment cost and default energy bid enhancements back in 2018, and management has indicated it will implement that and pursue it. So I think my only question or comment is, just confirming or reaffirming that yes, that is part of what the ISO is going to do. And I think I heard that today. So I just want to, that was my one note I made. So thanks.
Thanks, Anita. Anything else for Adam? Thank you, Adam. We'll now turn to public comment. So Silas, if you could open up the lines for public comment, I'd appreciate it.
If you would like to make a public comment, you can press the raise hand icon at the bottom center of your Zoom screen, or if you are dialed into our phone only line, you can press #2 on your telephone keypad to enter the comment queue. Okay, at this time, you do not have any hands up in the comment queue.
Chair Wagner, kind of filling the silence while we wait for potential comments, I wanted to address Member Decker's comment that yes, the ISO will be looking to pursue those CCDEBI commitment cost bidding changes starting in Q1 of 2026.
Thank you, Danny. Okay, before we go to our formal process of approving or assuming that we're going to approve this, just wanted to open it up to governing body members for any final comments, questions, reflections. And I see Member Kanzioka, you have your hand up, and Vice Chair Campbell, you do as well. So go ahead, Rob.
Thank you, Chair Wagner. If I may, I'd like to go to a question to Danny before we go into comments from the governing body. Danny, I assume you're still there.
Yes.
And again, so this is nothing new. You heard Dr. Hobbs' remarks on his, the enhancements looking forward. I was just wondering if you might be able to comment on your perspective on the enhancements that MSC has laid forth.
In principle, the enhancements are ideal. We want to provide all the flexibility to accurately represent costs in the market as possible. We will strive to implement what has been approved and is designed, but to be frank, it's really, really technically complicated. And so we're going to have to really carefully work through with our technology team at the ISO and stakeholders to figure out what is implementable.
Okay, so Danny, just so I understand, yeah, I mean, you have a proposal in front of us. It is what it is. Um, with regards to enhancements, these are things that you will keep, effectively tied in and monitoring. And when there's a opportunity to look at this particular area on the gas resource management, they'll be considered at that point, and you're not telling me that there's a guarantee of when they're going to be done, but when it's looked at again or when it is brought up again, that will surface and be addressed.
Well, it's been made clear to the ISO that this is a priority for stakeholders. So I don't know what the exact date it'll be done is, but it is something we're doing. That proposed enhancement doesn't change any of the proposed changes before you today. This is a set of changes that'll ensure that reference levels can be more accurate. That other set of enhancements goes a step farther than
Right.
this does, paired with some new market design elements. But I think actually Anna wanted to say something as well.
Member Consioka, if I could also, I think
Yeah, please.
perhaps part of the question has to do with, this is the last time we look at gas resource management issues and potential further enhancements. I think we've done a really thorough, investigation based on the input we've had from stakeholders. We don't have another gas resource management initiative starting next year. However, except for the CCW implementation effort we just noted. However, we always are ready and willing and will investigate if additional measures are needed for further enhancements. And there are some additional things that we've talked to with the MSC, we've looked at, and we are going to go and continue to see and test those. I will say through the prioritization effort on the roadmap, which you'll hear a little bit about more tomorrow, there wasn't anything that rose to the high level of need to prioritize for next year on gas resource management.
And I appreciate that and thank you. I appreciate the explanation. And Danny, thank you as well.
Vice Chair Campbell.
Thank you, Chair Wagner. I was going to go to comments. Is that
Yes.
appropriate?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, so I support the final proposal. One of the things I most like about this proposal is how stakeholders made use of multiple opportunities to shape the initiative. Ali Mace nicely laid this out in her opening presentation. I remember the 2023 RIF meeting in Salt Lake City, where gas-fired resource owners inside and outside of California described how they were situated when it came to managing gas costs and what the challenges were or were not for them. That really helped put this issue on the radar. And then I really observed how stakeholders worked through the working group meetings, which was a big commitment to define problem statements, worked with CAISO staff to find workable improvements. And Jonah Cabral with Portland General had the additional observation that this process helped the stakeholders build relationships with their counterparts. I also found the Market Surveillance Committee opinion to provide a very valuable bigger picture perspective, drawing on their, sounds like 60-year plus of collective experience on these particular set of issues. They described how the widespread capping of commitment costs leads to a heavy reliance on the administrative mechanisms that today's proposal adjusts. Over time, I would like to see market rules that put more reliance on individual market participants managing their costs and risks through market bids rather than through administrative adjustments. This proposal helps in this regard by providing additional flexibility under certain circumstances. And I certainly support looking at doing more, such as through the upcoming revisiting of the commitment cost bidding flexibility policy. Thanks.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campbell. Member Consioka, you have your hand back up. Now it's down.
I do. Now I'd like to make a comment. So thank you, Chair Wagner. So I thought the introduction of the stakeholder perspectives was good. I very much appreciated hearing from Andy Husted and Jonah Cabral and Todd Ryan. I think it helped show that pretty much all of the BAs across the West are uniquely situated. And this is taking a lot of effort to find some type of balance between coming up with a set policy here versus meeting all these individual needs. I think if Allie would have lined up an individual from every state, we would have heard comparable types of presentations. I think it's clear from their perspective and from everything that is presented, something needs to be done. And I don't think we want to either go another 10 years from when um, the last presentation and evaluation was done, or as Dr. Hobbs mentioned, wait another 25 years as kicking this around. And so some type of action needs to be taking place. I think the proposal is presenting a very viable step forward and approach. Um, I was initially thinking that maybe the proposal was getting too complex. I think both MSC and DMM did a nice job of trying to demonstrate it. It is finding that middle area of balance and finding that right level of appropriateness. Nobody is coming forward to say this isn't the right thing to be doing. And there is some risk here. Yep. But I think we all recognize the challenge between gas and electric, and then dealing with this type of uncertainty, and then recognizing that steps need to be made. We need to go forward. I think this is a really complex issue to deal with, and I think that staff has put together a proposal that really nicely encapsulates all the needs that have been identified and offers up this path forward. And I am convinced that DMM and staff will be monitoring this and providing data so we can see how it's performing. And I suspect that all of the entities that are participating in the market will also be tracking this. And if something is not right, we will probably hear about it. And for those reasons, I will be supporting this proposal. Thank you, Chair Wagner.
Thank you, Member Kanzioka. Member Decker?
If you guys recall last meeting in October, I was not very happy about where this was, and it's really come a long way. Again, as I reiterated a few minutes ago, the staff has really worked really well to move this forward and to gain more support from stakeholders, and we saw that in the three presentations that we just had. So it really has gone quite a ways, and the MSC initially had some concerns, and they've moved to at least be able to see that this is a path forward, and DMM has seen this is a path forward. So I think all those things coming together give me a lot more confidence about how this is being approached. And I really appreciate, and back to, I think it was Andy or Member Campbell that said, hey, this is initiated with the RIF back 2 years ago. And it's taken a long time to get here, but here we are. So I also support this.
Thank you, Member Decker. Any other comments from the governing body? I'll just take the opportunity to, I don't want to repeat what's been said. I agree with my colleagues. I'm happy to see this finally move forward, but I also appreciate that taking the time to get it right and to continue working with stakeholders. I'd really like to thank the Andy, Todd, and Jonah for presenting to us. Providing that presentation helps put things into context and understand what it's like in a day in the life of your utilities and the implications this has on you, and coming to a conclusion where it will make it more manageable and ultimately hopefully lead for better implementation and success of EDAM. With that, I will turn it to Roger for our official motion on this proposal.
Excellent. Thank you, Chair Wagner. Yeah, it seems like we've kind of already done that, and so this will formalize it. It's a great discussion. Appreciate all the comments. Move that the Western Energy Markets governing body approves the gas resource management final proposal as described in the memorandum dated December 10, 2025, and requests that management place this initiative on the ISO Board of Governors consent agenda, and move that the Western Energy Markets governing body authorizes management to make all necessary and appropriate filings with the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission to implement the changes proposed in this memorandum, including any filings to incorporate commission guidance and any initial rulings on the proposed tariff amendment.
I
We
will,
have a
I will
Second.
move forward with that motion.
thank you,
Second.
Rob. Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That covers it all. Thank you. Excellent. We have a successful vote on that, and we can move on to the next item.
Thank you, Roger. Next up is extended day ahead market onboarding and implementation update. Today, I believe we have with us, because I can't see people on the screen, I'm going to go off the presentation. Oh, there you are. Khaled Abdul Rahman, VP and Chief Information Officer and Technology Officer. Sorry, that was a mouthful. And my brain is still processing all the gas resource management. Why don't you go ahead and share your presentation with us?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Wagner, and good afternoon, Chair Wagner and Vice Chair Campbell and the governing body members. Today, we want to give you a quick update on the implementation of the extended day-ahead market. And this is basically, as you know, we are doing both the development of the extended day-ahead market as well as the onboarding of the ADAM entities, the first is specifically Pacific Corp. And also we will mention about the Portland General because we also started activities also for Portland General. I want to just a quick note that we are moving based on the schedule for the implementation. We are on track. We have done all of our scenarios for the market simulation, and things are moving in the right direction for us. There are challenges that we are working with our partners, Pacific Corp, and now Portland General is officially in the EDAM market simulation, even though it's at the early stages of that. I wanted to, maybe this is the first time for me that I will also sit back and watch the presentation because I have with me the Executive Director, Heather Kelly, who is the Executive Director for our Project Management Office, that she will be giving us the presentation. So this is the first time since the implementation of EIM onboarding as well as the EDAM that I will be watching the presentation rather than giving it. So thank you for that. One more thing, sorry, I forgot. I would like really to thank all of the stakeholders for all of their comments and help in the implementation workshops that we have been conducting, several of those. And the contribution and the participation was fantastic. This is the first time I see that many participants in the market simulation and asking any questions, and as well as interested in the implementation details. So thank you for that. With that, Heather, please start.
Thanks, Khaled, and welcome, Heather.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you. As Khaled said, we are on track with our implementation and onboarding activities for EDAM. With this first go around, we are doing the implementation and the onboarding in parallel. We're currently onboarding two entities, both Pacific Core and Portland General. Currently, Pacific Core is in the phase that we call market simulation, and I'll go over what that means in the next couple of slides. And Portland General is in connectivity and integration testing. We're on track with both of those. Next slide. So I get asked a lot, how do we know if we're on track? How do we know that we're ready for EDAM? And really these two phases, market simulation and parallel operations, that's how we tell if we're on track. Market simulation is where we test all of the technical functionality with our market participants for the extended day ahead market. We do this with specific scenarios that we've defined with our market participants. We run these on demand according to a calendar. We can rerun them if we need to, which we have done already for EDAM. We produce the market results and we validate settlements. So for each of these scenarios, we go through with our market participants and test this technical functionality. Then we move on to parallel operations. Parallel operations is where we run nonstop the market with normal market timelines. And it is really the first test end to end from 3 days before the day ahead all the way through to settlements. And the point here is to really test operator and business readiness. So we've already tested the technical functionality in market simulation. We know that's working. Now we move to parallel operations and see if we can make this whole process run. That happens continuously every day. And we test that through some readiness criteria that I will go over in the next slide. We have done a lot of training for EDAM. I'm not going to go through all these details here, but we have been testing pretty much nonstop since June of this year, and we'll go through to the end of the year. To date, we've tested over 1,200 individuals, and we still have a couple of more testings to do before the end of the year. So we have had opportunity for all of our onboarding entities as well as general public to take testing and learn more about the extended day ahead market. Next slide. So in the market simulation where we're testing the functional and technical functionality, we have certain scenarios like I mentioned before. We have gone through and passed most of those scenarios. We still have a few scenarios that we've run and that we're validating the results. We have one scenario that we have yet to be scheduled. That is around the congestion revenue allocation, which was a policy change that came a little bit later than the rest of EDAM. And so we haven't gotten that functionality all the way built out yet. We have it on site with us at the ISO, but we haven't scheduled the scenario yet. Next slide. For parallel operations, we have readiness criteria. This is part of our tariff. The readiness criteria is posted on our Western Energy Markets website if anybody would like to take a look at it. We go through with our onboarding entities. So right now we're doing this with PacifiCorp, and we go over certain areas. Are all the agreements up and running? Is all the training complete? Have we validated settlements? And these are the things that we check off both in market simulation as well as in parallel operations to make sure that we are ready to go live with EDAM. We've gone over these criteria with PacifiCorp. We've gotten their input. We've come up with measurable elements to make sure we are ready. And we will post these when we get them all completed on our external website. That's all I have. Hopefully that gives a little bit of insight as to where we are with EDAM implementation.
Thank you, Heather. You make it seem like so simple, but I know it's far more complicated. It boggles my mind and appreciate the work you all are doing. Member Kanzioka.
Thank you, Chair Wagner. And Heather, I agree with Rebecca's remarks that you sound very calm, cool, and collective. And I know that the work that you and all the staff are going through is anything but that. And I know that market simulation should be a rocky road to making certain that things get corrected. And there are probably a lot of things that had to be done, and because that's part of what the process is. My question is, are you finding or have you found anything more unusual in the development of this very first market simulation with Pacificor for EDAM than you did with the WEIM? Is it significantly more issues that are having to be corrected and fixed and new things added, or is it somewhat comparable? And I realize it's more complex.
Yeah, so with WEIM, we have done that quite a few times. And so over time, we've refined our onboarding process and we've refined our systems. And so when we do WEIM onboarding, which we are actually doing 2 of right now, I may add, those problems are a little bit more predictable. But with EDAM, we're actually implementing the software and the market changes at the same time we're onboarding. So yes, I might sound calm, but we did find some problems. And we've gotten software patches and fixes, and we've retested things and rerun scenarios. And we are learning our lessons as we go along.
Heather, can I add just for a reminder, compared to the first WEIM, in the first WEIM, our focus was to extend the market, meaning to create those transfers between the areas. Here in the EDAM, in addition to that, we have huge changes in our day-ahead market itself, the day-ahead enhancements, meaning the changes in the RUC functions, the changes in the market itself, the introduction of 2 new products in the day-ahead market. All of that was needed to be done first and then put the extended day-ahead market on top of that base. So that's like 2 major implementation in one. And like Heather said, we're also not forgetting about our dear WEIM onboarding entities that we have 2, and those 2 have also we are started the testing and the connectivity with those entities as well. So all of these tracks are moving in parallel right now.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Khaled. Thank you, Heather. I admire how calm you are. I'm never that calm, even when I am calm.
This is the criteria that I use to work with the people that I work with. They have to be calm.
Well done, Khaled. I completely agree, and I love it. Any other comments from the governing body? Okay, Silas, we'll open it up to public comment, please.
If you would like to make a public comment, you can press the raise hand icon at the bottom center of your Zoom screen or #2 on the phone only line. Okay, at this time, we do not have any hands up for comments.
Thank you, Silas. We'll turn to our next agenda item. Where are we now? Briefing on Western Energy Imbalance Market Benefits and Market Update. And I believe we have Anna McKenna for an introduction.
I believe Guillermo needs no introduction, but yes, I'll have the pleasure of introducing Guillermo. He'll be giving us the WEIM Market Benefits Update. Guillermo?
Thank you, Anna, for the introduction. Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, members of the governing body, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here to provide an update regarding the economic benefits for the real-time market for the third quarter of 2025. We can move to the next slide, please. Can we step one back? Yeah. For the third quarter of 2025, we have a total economic benefits of $412 million. That is within the typical range of quarterly benefits that we have seen for the last 2-3 years. And it's a testament of the benefits that the market brings to the participating entities. The benefits accrue on every single 5-minute interval of the market. There are many dynamics at play that determine the level of the benefits observed. We have that across all the balancing areas participating in the market. And overall, there are effectively three main dynamics. One of those, obviously, is the footprint. With such a large footprint of the real-time market composed of 23 balancing areas, naturally, there are the capabilities in terms of the transfers to realize these economic benefits. The second one is the actual enabler of these benefits, that is the economic transfers that may happen between any pair of balancing areas. And that is complemented effectively with the value of the energy being transacted and displaced. You may have conditions where you have exactly the same level of transfers, but the prices at which they are transacted is going to determine different levels of benefits. You may notice that in this quarter in particular, we have quite a high level of benefits specifically for Nevada balancing area. Nevada has been accruing solid benefits for the last year, and this quarter is not the exception. And it boils down still to the same underlying mechanics that we have for the benefits. I have to say that for the Nevada balancing area, about 80% of the time in this quarter, they were exporting transfer to other balancing areas. And in any transfer involved, there are two entities, and each one of those are exposed to benefits. The entity that is receiving the transfer is going to displace more expensive generation and is going to realize a cost savings. On the other hand, the entity that is enabling the export going out of their area is going to realize a revenue because it's selling cheaper power to other areas at more expensive prices, and they are going to accrue a revenue. And that is in general the dynamic that we see, not surprisingly for all the transfers that we have in the system, but it's more marked for the Nevada balancing area. Next slide, please. With the total Q3 of benefits of $412 million, the total cumulative benefits we have since the inception of the EIM market is right now at $7.8 billion. I can tell you by the pace at which we accrue benefits on a monthly basis and where we are right now in the fourth quarter of 2025, we have already passed the $8 billion mark of benefits, and we will be reporting those numbers in the next briefing. Next slide, please. The transfers is the best reflection of the enablers for the benefits of the real-time market. This is a very typical illustration that we have shown, and it's a testament of the power of having a centralized market that enables all the transactions that are possible in any permutation of balancing areas receiving and sending power. We also have on the right-hand side the total exports or imports accrue for every balancing area. In this quarter in particular, it's quite interesting to see that the CAISO balancing area had a more balanced transfer condition between imports and exports. Typically, it's more leaning towards having a higher volume of exports, but in this case, the conditions are such that it's kind of break-even between the imports and the exports. And the third one happens to be Nevada because it's 80% of the time in an export condition. Next slide, please. If we were to see the evolution of the transfers since the time we implemented the EIM market, this is a good pattern to have because it is a reflection how the EIM market has grown as we have onboarded additional entities over the years. And we can see that since the last onboarding of the new entities back in late 2023, the level of transfers have been very robust and sustained. And we expect that to continue to happen with the existing footprint that we have in the market and with the additional transfers that may come with new entities onboarded in the upcoming 2026. I also have to say that recently we observed some expansion of the transfer capabilities between some areas in the Pacific Northwest. We are accruing more operational data, and we are going to be reporting how that has translated into the benefits in the next briefing. Next slide, please. Turning to prices. Prices tend to be a good way to realize the overall dynamics of the markets. As we have moved out of the summer conditions getting into the mid-moderate levels of demand, prices tend to track closely. In this case, for the third quarter, we can see that the prices settle in the similar range what we saw in 2024. The prices here are organized in two sets, one in bars that stand for the different prices of the regions of the EIM market. We have organized the different balancing areas by regions, the Pacific Northwest, the California area, the Desert Southwest, and the Central. And naturally, we're going to see some price separation. In these few months, we have seen that there is more pronounced separation for CAISO balancing area prices due to mainly internal transmission congestion. The other trend that we have with dotted lines stands for the bilateral prices. These are not CAISO prices, they are bilateral transactions. And we have two reference points, one in the Pacific Northwest, the Mid-Sea price, and the Palo Verde in the Desert Southwest. Typically, they tend to track closely. For the last 2 months, we have seen some divergence, even though Mid-Sea prices remain high. The prices in the Desert Southwest tended to go down. Next slide, please. A more granular view of the prices is when we look at the specific balancing area prices. These are simple average prices for every balancing area per month in the quarter. The prices are reflecting summer conditions. As we all know, this summer was relatively moderate, and the prices are going to reflect that. We don't see extreme increases of prices across the board. We do see price separation, as you can see from the different heights of the different bars, and that in general is because of price separation induced by internal transmission constraints. Specifically, the highest prices you are going to see happen to be for balancing areas that are within the California geography, and they are, again, driven by internal transmission constraints. As a reference, we also have the bilateral prices, and overall for this quarter, they tended to be higher than the real-time CAISO prices. That concludes my briefing. I will be happy to take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Guillermo. Any questions from the governing body? Oh, Deborah.
I don't have any questions, but I just have to say your use of color, Guillermo, was just amazing. There was one slide where it was beautiful. So thank you very much. But I actually do have a question. So I always, when I look at these, I focus perhaps inappropriately, but I always look at Seattle because it makes the most sense to me. And you made the comment about export import, and on the two slides I saw Seattle has a net benefit of $14 million in this quarter. But then I look at it and I see that they were a net importer. How is the value calculated if I am importing?
Yes, let me elaborate on that. Anytime there is a transfer between two balancing areas, both entities are going to realize a benefit.
Okay.
For the entity that is importing the energy, the benefit realizes in the following way. There may be internal generation to that balancing area that has a specific cost. By relying on a transfer, that transfer is going to come with a cheaper, more economical price that is going to displace that more expensive generation. We measure the cost of that generation displacement that happens to be more expensive, and that difference is what amounts to the benefit for the importer entity.
Okay, thank you. That's the whole counterfactual. Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for Guillermo? Thank you, Guillermo, for walking through the NV Energy data. I was surprised they accounted for almost a quarter of the economic benefits. So that caught my eye. So thank you for explaining that.
You're welcome.
Okay, next up, we have our upcoming policy hot topics. And I believe Becky Robinson is here to brief us.
Hi, good afternoon, Chair Wagner, Vice Chair Campbell, and members of the governing body. There are 3 policy items I wanted to flag for you in this Hot Topics update this afternoon at the end of a long meeting. I will try and be brief. The first of those on price formation enhancements. So at the last governing body meeting in October, we had a spotlight item on price formation enhancements, and you heard from several stakeholders as well as ISO staff there on scarcity pricing. And in particular, you heard from several stakeholders on their interest in pursuing conversations on something more comprehensive on scarcity pricing. And that request was made in the context of having seen a straw proposal that we had published coming out of those working groups. And these stakeholders were identifying that something more on comprehensive scarcity pricing they viewed as an appropriate part of that package. So since that last governing body meeting, that expression of interest has prompted other stakeholders to voice their perspectives on this issue as well, which I will say are varied. So while almost everyone agrees that this is an issue that's worth discussing, there are at least 2 camps of stakeholders that we're seeing now in terms of the stakeholder meetings we've had since then, as well as written comments on this issue. And so one of those camps favors prioritizing these conversations now, and that's consistent with what you heard at the last governing body meeting. But another camp of stakeholders is in a different place, and they favor stability and design in the near term as we go live with EDAM and our day-ahead market enhancements, and question whether now is really the right time to discuss these kind of changes to the pricing in our markets when there's so much attention focused on EDAM and day-ahead market enhancements go live. And so I wanted to share that additional perspective with you, given the conversation we had at the last governing body meeting for context, and so that you kind of are up to date on what we've been spending time talking about with stakeholders since then. And as for our next steps, we are looking to discuss the price formation enhancements broadly with the Market Surveillance Committee. We always appreciate their input and insights into our market design efforts. And we are also going to be spending some time evaluating and discussing the comments received just this last Friday on price formation enhancements as we figure out how to move forward on this initiative. And those comments will be informing to us as we do that. So the second policy item I wanted to flag for you also follows up on a discussion at the October board meetings, board and governing body meetings, and that is on the EDAM congestion revenue allocation. So at the October meetings, you had a briefing and heard from my colleague Guillermo on the analysis that's been done to kind of inform congestion revenue allocation discussions, and particularly that analysis has been focused on data we have from the energy imbalance market. So since then, this last week, we held the first stakeholder working group restarting those congestion revenue allocation discussions. And there again, we started with the presentation and in-depth discussion of the analysis, and then started the conversation on some principles to inform conversations on future evolution of congestion revenue allocation in EDAM. And we put out some of those principles for consideration, talked about them with stakeholders. We'll take written comments as people sort of marinate on those, figure out do they capture what they think is important in terms of guidelines for how we move forward with that. We'll plan to iterate on those principles in the new year. And then after that, when we feel like we've grounded the conversation well in those principles, we will shift into possible future designs. The third policy item I wanted to flag for you is that we are making space for items related to EDAM enhancements. And you'll see that reflected tomorrow in the briefing in the 2026 policy roadmap. And to be clear, these EDAM enhancements are not about changes for day one. They are about sort of continued evolution as we get EDAM up and running and identify elements that need to be worked on or talked about. And so recently, related to preparing for EDAM go live, the ISO has held a number of implementation workshops, and you'll hear some details related to that in a different briefing tomorrow on EDM tariff changes. But one topic that has arisen from some of those implementation conversations relates to intertie schedule modeling or intertie bidding. And I wanted to flag that we will be continuing conversations on that topic in the new year to explore different intertie modeling designs. And we see this as a natural part of getting a new market up off the ground. I've heard multiple people highlight that with the Western Energy Imbalance Market, the first couple years had continuing enhancements after startup, where there was a series of refinements to get it to the place where it is as successful as it is today. And so we have our eye already on what can we do to continue to refine and evolve the EDM design to make it again, a successful market option. So with that, I will pause and see if there's any questions.
Vice Chair Campbell.
Yeah, Becky, thank you for those updates. It's good to hear kind of where the ground that people will start running on at the beginning of the new year in these initiatives. On the scarcity pricing one, so it's certainly nice when stakeholders all agree on priorities and direction, but that's not always the case, of course. You have sounds like some very different points of view here on priorities. I guess how are you going to sort of, CAISO staff kind of think through where to go next? What other kind of input are you looking for, or considerations are you going to have around sort of figuring out what path to take?
That's a great question. I mean, I think I did take, I thought it was a helpful data point in the comments that the conversation really wasn't about, for the most part, should we do this, should we not do this, right? I think people are, recognize that scarcity pricing is a critical element of market design, right? And that's a point that, for instance, our Market Surveillance Committee has emphasized over the years. And so I think it is a question of timing. And I'm not sure exactly how, not sure exactly what our path forward on this as of now, but I think that but welcome your input. If you see sort of guidelines that you think would be helpful in this regard. I think we will, I think in any conversation, if we want it to be a good conversation, we need stakeholders to be engaged and we need support for that conversation. And so I think we will be sort of having a little bit of a conversation internally to ground ourselves of, do we have support for having that conversation right now?
Yeah.
Andy, I'll just offer a couple thoughts. Obviously, I totally agree with what Becky's saying, with lots more input. I think, we've had a number of initiatives that have been going on for fairly extended periods of time. So I think part will be looking to kind of bring some conclusion to some of those longer dated issues. I know we've also had a little bit of controversial input around the work that we're doing on load flexibility, the demand of distributed energy resources, whether that rises to the priority list for us. I think at the CAISO, just given a lot of energy around that topic in both inside California and across the West, that's one that I'm really hoping we can continue to keep some momentum on. So I think, we will continue to think together as a team, make sure the stakeholder input is in there. But I think that there's a lot out there still. And I think we just, to your point, we need to be really focused on, I think, the highest value, highest impact initiatives.
Thanks, Elliot. I think, Anita, you had your hand up next.
So I'm not sure that this is a question for Becky, but I've asked this question of staff and haven't really gotten a response. So I saw that the roadmap was finished. Is that right? It's finalized? Anyone? The roadmap?
Yes. Anita, this is Anna. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Member Decker. You're referring to the roadmap that we'll be presenting tomorrow, or is that what you're asking? Is that finalized?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, we go through the process every year and, create a draft roadmap. We're now going to be presenting what we refer to as the final roadmap for next year. But keep in mind that we are always very cognizant that there may be changes that come through. And this past year, for example, we had to make sure that we introduced a new item into our roadmap and pivoted very quickly to do so with stakeholders. But it is it's a little bit of a living document, I would say, but you have to also stop and create a roadmap, if you wish, for the next year. And that's where we're at this point, which you'll be hearing more about in the joint briefing.
Okay. So what my question has been that I haven't gotten an answer to is, as I recalled last year, the RIF had its roundtable prior to the finalization of the roadmap. And this year, the roadmap is finished and the RIF is having its roundtable in March. So as I heard Rebecca say that you're leaving some space for some EDAM, is there going to be space if in the roundtable there's something that the RIF roundtable forum brings forward as it's done in the last 2 sessions that they've had, whether it was the gas management or whether it was, I can't remember the last one that they did on this last meeting, but another initiative. So I want to understand, they're out of sync this year. And so I want to make sure that the RIF's feedback or process is actually going to add value to the roadmap.
Yeah, and I think you're referring to the timing and the sequencing of the meetings between the RIF and the timing of, when we were publishing for the end of the roadmap in 2025 for 2026. But yes, I think, sorry, I'll just finish sorry. Well, we are definitely going to be able to, take whatever input we get. And as I said earlier, if we need to pivot on anything, we will, depending on the input that we get. So that's sort of a natural calendaring of meetings challenge that was experienced in terms of those 2 consecutive meetings. And I think Allie might have some additional comments, I'm told. So if Allie's still on the line, Allie, if you'd like to provide some additional color to that, please do.
Don't think I have additional color to provide on that one at this point. Sorry. Thank you.
I would only ask that
Allie?
in the next,
Ellie, it's Joanne here. I don't know. I think you may have cut off, so I didn't know if you had any other additional comments regarding the planning with the RIF.
I think she said she didn't have anything.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Okay.
Apologies.
Yeah, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
No, I think the planning for the roadmap for next year is underway, including coordination with the RIF on the timing for their roundtable and their enhancements and how those 2 will connect to each other.
Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate
Thanks.
knowing that you guys are looking at it for next year. So that was my question.
Deborah.
So one is, let me just jump on that one and say it feels weird to me too. And I understand that calendars are hard and sometimes you just have to do the best you can, but it feels like if I was a stakeholder and I watched the sequencing, that would feel weird to me. So just know that. And then my question really was, you said in the presentation that that you had made room, and I think Anita just referenced you said you'd made room for EDAM and issues that might come up. How did you make room? What did you have to take off? Because when we were in December, we talked about CAISO staff as well as stakeholders, and we talked a little bit about that earlier today, but those 2 groups both being really, really challenged in terms of the body of work that you are being asked to do and that the stakeholder community is being asked to do, which I guess is partly why I worry about things not being sequenced, because it can feel disrespectful to people who are feeling overwhelmed anyway. So how are you going to make room?
Well, Member Smith, this is Anna. I will be happy to answer that. The example I was giving was earlier this year, we had to make space for the congestion revenue allocation in EDAM. And what we did is we actually went back to stakeholders, and we proposed and created some space, if you wish, in everybody's calendar by pushing off a number of items, including the price formation enhancements had to get pushed off a little bit. And so we had to do that in an open and transparent manner to get the feedback, as you say, it is necessary to make sure that everybody can evaluate how it impacts them. In last year, we had a good opportunity to have, just before finalizing the roadmap, a meeting at the RIF that was focused on that more specifically, and I think that was very helpful. I think calendaring just created some challenges there. That's not to say we did not get any input this year through the RIF process. We've been actually coordinating with them and been very closely coordinating with the RIF, and all members have provided input in the roadmap process. So which you'll hear about more tomorrow when Amelia Blanky provides a presentation at the roadmap. We'll have an opportunity to share with you on the stakeholder process that we actually conducted through this past year to do exactly what you just said, which is how do you make sure that you get all the items in place. Now for next year, we'll do the same thing. If there are new items that come in, we'll have to shift things. We're cognizant that you can't take on new items without having to make space on either items. We didn't create I would say, an item that we don't know what those things are, but we did create, because EDAM is a new market design that's getting implemented next year, what we refer to as the EDAM unknown items that might come up,
Yeah.
And so we have shared with stakeholders, and stakeholders provided us actually very detailed information on what's the art of the possible for next year, which you'll hear more about tomorrow. And that helps us try to plan in a way that's more feasible for everybody, so that, as you noted, resources are tight, people have a lot on their plates, and trying to manage that effectively. But unfortunately, I've given you now a little bit of a preview of what's going to be a briefing in the joint meeting. I apologize for that. You'll hear about it again.
That's okay. Thanks, Anna. I appreciate the response.
Okay, any other comments or questions from the governing body? And I also want to note that I need to go back and do public comment on the previous presentation. But we're going to take public comment first now on policy hot topics. Silas, can you open it up for this agenda item?
So for this agenda item, if you would like to make a comment, you can press the raise hand icon on Zoom or #2 on the phone only line. Okay, no hands up for this agenda item.
Okay, and to make sure we're following the proper procedures, we'll do public comment on the WEIM benefits and market update.
Okay, put your hand up. I'm sorry, you can press the raise hand icon on Zoom or #2 on the phone. Okay, no hands up on this comment on this item either.
Thank you, Silas. Next up is informational reports. Does the governing body, any members of the governing body wish to make any comments or have any questions on our informational reports? I'm seeing heads shaking no. Then let's open this up for public comment.
For public comment, you can press the raise hand icon on Zoom or #2 on the phone. All right, no hands up in the queue.
And finally, governing body, any future agenda items that you can think of right now, if you can think, it's been a long day. Anything for future agendas? I am seeing none. So we thank everybody for their time and attention today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. We're adjourned.
Thank you, Chair Wagner. Thank you, everyone.
Yep. Thank you, Rebecca.
Thanks.
Terrific.
Everybody.
Bye.